In the last two videos, we've been learning how to unpack the prompt, brainstorm the content of the prompt, and develop claims that form the basic structure of the LEQ. Remember that our claims are not only the topic sentences of the body paragraphs, but also combine to form the thesis in the introductory paragraph. So now we're going to put on the finishing touches by situating the topic in its historical context and striving to make our essay more complex. The topics of this video are contextualization and complexity. So what does contextualization mean? Well, in history, it means putting a topic into a larger historical situation. It's knowing some background or previous information about something that helps us better understand the topic at hand. This is a difficult thing for many students to grasp, but actually it's probably something you've done a lot with friends or family when you sit down to watch Netflix. You're starting episode 5, and your friend didn't see episode 4. So you got to quickly catch them up so they'll understand what they're about to see.
Hold these keys, hold those keys, reboot, reinstall, redo, refresh.
Or you're painting a picture and you want to put a background behind your subject so it exists in a specific place.
We'll get crazy here.
You understand that both of these situations require some specific information. Imagine if your friend wants to know what happened in the last episode and you say something like, "Since the beginning of time, humans have always had stressful relations with those around them." They'd probably smack you.
Get out.
You can't say general things. There has to be some substance. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you can't do this without using your historical knowledge. To set this up, let's remember from the last video that your thesis and evidence have to reside at the intersection of the main ideas of the prompt. So, our prompt, evaluate the extent to which the expansion of land-based empires changed social structures between 1450 and 1750, has three main ideas: land-based empires, social changes, and the years 1450 to 1750. Here's where your thesis, claims, and arguments have to reside. However, your contextualization, which should be in the intro paragraph right before the thesis, has to step outside of one of these circles. I mean, you can't set up your friend for episode 5 by telling them about episode 5. You have to zoom back, stepping outside of one of these circles. And this is the only part of the essay where you can do this. In fact, you have to. For example, if the prompt is about a development in China, zoom out to something beyond China that's part of the bigger picture. If the prompt is about a development between 1750 and 1900, wind back to the 1450 period and walk it forwards towards the prompt. Let's look at a few examples and then turn to our prompt about land-based empires. So here's an LEQ prompt. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the centralization of political states accelerated cultural diffusion between 1200 and 1450. From the topic pages, we can see that there are many possible claims for this prompt in the course content. We could use topic 2.2 and talk about how the unified Mongols diffused culture, or topic 1.1 about how the centralized Song dynasty spread Asian cultural traditions. So how could we put this in context? We could write that China had an economic boom during the centralized Song dynasty. They developed paper currency, manufactured silk and porcelain, or rebuilt the Grand Canal. As they grew economically, areas around China wanted their luxury goods. With this increase in trade with its neighbors, cultural items spread as well from China across the rest of Asia. Notice that we stepped outside the circles of politics and culture and dealt with economics. And next would come your thesis, supported by any of the evidence that you learned in topic 1.1. So let's get back to the prompt we've been working on in these videos. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the expansion of land-based empires changed social structures between 1450 and 1750. Step outside the center of these prompt ideas and come up with a few sentences that place this topic in its historical context. Let's go pre-1450 and talk about the Mongols. They spread gunpowder, and by 1450, large land-based empires, or gunpowder empires, were able to form. These powerful states changed the social structures of areas they ruled. You see, we went outside the terms of the prompt, started with the Mongols and gunpowder, and walked it back to the topic of the prompt. Written out in the essay, the contextualization piece might look like this. In the 1200s, the Mongols rapidly conquered much of Eurasia and created the largest land-based empire in history. Because they placed all this area under one rule, exchanges in culture and technology greatly increased across Eurasia. By 1450, gunpowder had spread to many areas and allowed for the rise of massive land-based empires, which conquered vast territories and changed many societies. And there you have contextualization. And by the way, it's the same thing for the DBQ. So what about complexity? Well, my first piece of advice is don't worry about it. It's a difficult point to get and the subject of unnecessary stress. In fact, most students who make a 5 on the AP test do this without earning the complexity point. Did you hear that? Let me say it again. Most students who make a 5 on the AP test do this without earning the complexity point. In fact, less than 1% of students get this on the AP test.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Not really. But if and only if you've mastered all of the other rubric items, here are some ways you can earn the complexity point on the LEQ. The most common ways students earn this point is by making a counter argument. I call this the however part of the essay. You've made your claims in the thesis about how the expansion of land-based empires led to social changes in the period 1450 to 1750. After your 2 claims, you make a however claim, stating that despite these social changes, some aspects of society did not change as land-based empires expand. This answers the evaluate the extent to which portion of the prompt. You're explaining that despite the social changes brought about by imperial expansion, it's actually a little more complicated than that. Some things did not change, and this becomes a 3rd claim in your thesis. But since the complexity point is not earned in a single place in the essay, you would have to devote a 3rd body paragraph to develop this claim with appropriate evidence. Sound easy? It's not.
Man, it's dang old complicated, you know, man. It's like a dang old Rubik's Cube.
It's complex. Another prompt we looked at earlier in the video is develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the centralization of political states accelerated cultural diffusion between 1200 and 1450. For complexity, we can make a counterclaim that despite the fact that centralized states were very good at diffusing culture, culture could also diffuse through decentralized political structures as well. In our essay, we'd support this by making a counterclaim in the thesis and then devoting a paragraph to how the Swahili city-states or cities like Venice and decentralized Europe also diffuse culture. The however part of your thesis is simply building out the other part of a historical skill. If the prompt asks you to analyze similarities, you could make a counterclaim that there were also important differences. Each of these counterclaims would need to be mentioned and developed across your essay. Another way students have successfully earned the elusive complexity point is by developing a skill within a skill. Using the prompt we've been working on as an example, let's say you're writing about how the expansion of empires changed societies. This is a causation essay. You could get complexity by also making this a comparison essay. That is, explaining how the social effects of the expanding Ottoman Empire compare with the social effects of the expanding Qing Empire. You're comparing causation, a skill within another skill. Again, don't let this stress you out. I teach college, and most of my college students could never do this. So focus on the other rubric points and tell yourself all is good.
Because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
In the next video, we're going to do a rubric walkthrough on a model LEQ essay. Then we're going to do a similar series on the DBQ. I will see you then.